Next, we talk to James Carlini of Carlini and Associates about technological advances in fiber optics that are building the foundation for economic development, as well as discuss how cyber warfare is used to combat terrorism. This runs for 15 minutes.
Jim Carlini, thanks for joining us on the All Night Channel. Been a while since we spoke to you, and you have written a book some years ago, Location, Connectivity.
Yes.
And we are here in DuPage County, one of the more economically developed areas of the state of Illinois. But we wanted to touch base with you to find out what now are the critical issues that people should be following from what you know and from what you consult with others.
Well, what they should be looking at is infrastructure projects. You know, when we take a look at infrastructure, not only in the state, but also nationwide, we need to understand a better approach to infrastructure. I talk about critical infrastructure. I talk about intelligent infrastructure. And one of the things we need to understand is we can't go and attack a project from a single dimensional standpoint. You know, let's take the wall, for example. The wall, you know,
the wall on the border?
On the southwestern border of the United States. You know, the suggestion just recently was that, we should put solar panels on top of the wall. That gives the wall a much better residual value. We can take it a step further. I just finished an article about adding fiber optics to the wall, where if you're going to build this wall, why not run a whole new set of conduit where you can have fiber optics running in the southwestern states, which they don't have as much of that broadband capability there, broadband connectivity, that if you have that, then you're adding more residual value for just a small incremental cost. We have to approach projects like that in infrastructure nationwide, as well as in Illinois. We can't look at something and say we want to build this bridge or we want to build this road. We have to take a look and say what other capabilities, what other layers of infrastructure can we put on this project to make it more valuable to the state without spending money over and over again doing it the single approach, which we've done in the past.
And when we talk about fiber optics, because a lot of people don't deal with these issues, explain what fiber optic is and why it matters.
Fiber optic matters because, most of the old nationwide telephone network has been built with copper and coaxial cable. And what you want is fiber optics because you can carry so much more as far as traffic. So there's much better capacity with fiber optics. And to give you an example, everybody talks about how many wireless devices we have. There's been studies in the last 2-3 years that say we've got 10 billion wireless devices, and we're moving to the year 2020, and by that time we should have anywhere from 30, 50, or 75 billion wireless devices in the country. And in order to support that, you need a lot more capacity because you're going to have so much more traffic. So we need to increase the amount of fiber optics that we have in the ground so that we can carry that capacity, because otherwise we're lagging behind in the world as far as not having connectivity, broadband connectivity fast enough to carry all the information that we have.
Yeah, so I often use the analogy of roadways. I mean, we built the highway system back in the 50s under Eisenhower, and people can just imagine. I can still remember as a young child trying to go when it was a 2-lane road, and you'd be behind some little old lady with all the trucks and everyone else backed up. That almost never happens to us anymore because of the 3- and 4-lane highways that we've built. It's kind of the same thing where the copper wires are the 2-lane road, and now with fiber optic, it's like having almost like a 10-lane highway.
Well, even more than that. If you put in fiber optics, you go from 2-lane, 4-lane to 1,000-lane or 2,000-lane, and this is something that we need to address because as it stands in the world today, the United States isn't leading the world as far as internet connectivity and speeds. We're number 10. People like South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, all those countries have faster internet speeds than we do. And this is something that we should be setting the pace. We shouldn't be lagging behind.
If all we know about the internet is that we watch a Netflix movie and it seems to come over pretty well, why do we need that? What are they doing that we're not doing? How will that economically disadvantage us?
Well, it disadvantages us because we don't have the capacity to do as much work, especially if you're looking at industrial type applications, manufacturing. Go to the store today, go to Best Buy, go to some of these other appliance stores. They're all South Korean appliances. We don't even make any appliances anymore in the United States. And part of that reason is that they built up their infrastructure. The infrastructure is the platform for commerce for any country. And we've been lagging behind as far as some of the layers in our country should be updated, not just roads and bridges, but the network infrastructure as well.
And I would say that, I mean, just as no one imagined a Netflix back in 1987, or, you know, we don't know what's coming down the road, but if we have that 1,000-lane highway, which is the fiber optic, then whatever comes down the road, we have the capacity for it, right?
Exactly. And it's something where the more capacity you have, it's just like a garage. I always explain it, you know, when you have a house and you have a 2-car garage, you say, oh, geez, I wish I had a 3-car garage. And then once you buy the house with the 3-car garage, you say, oh, I wish I had a 4-car garage. And it's the same with network capabilities and network capacity. The more you have, people will find a use for it. And people, you know, one of the things we're seeing now is that there's a lot more video applications. Video applications take up a lot of bandwidth and capacity. And the more people experiment with that, like broadband streaming of live events, you're going to need more capacity. And that's one way to bring it to the end user, is by making sure that backbone network has super high speeds.
So when we're here in DuPage County, and there's an office park right behind you, we're in, and this is where you build these and you try to get people to move to the state of Illinois and increase, you know, tax revenue, increase employment, make our economy grow. When you advise people who are developing parks like this, what kind of advice are you giving them?
Well, this goes back a couple of years ago. The DuPage, it was called the DuPage National Technology Park, which is an 800-acre park, which is now called the DuPage Business Center. We brought in several different carriers, network carriers, and they're at 40 gigabits per second, and this was unheard of. And that's the type of capacity you need to bring in, because that's the type of capacity corporate site selection committees are taking a look at and saying, if you don't have that, we're going to move on to the next state. And that's something that we need to address more of, because that's not only an issue that we face, but every state in the union faces, that if you don't have the infrastructure, if you don't have that platform for commerce, you're not going to address and you're not going to attract these new corporate facilities.
You know, the other thing that all of us are aware of is cybersecurity issues. How do we protect? Where are we on the issue of cybersecurity? And you know, these days you could have someone in China or someone in North Korea or Russia hacking our business secrets, and something that we might have spent billions of hours to develop, they can steal in an afternoon.
Well, that's it. We're in a new type of warfare, and it's asymmetrical war. When you take a look at all the resources we have, we spend billions of dollars on our defense fund, but we're being attacked by small cells of different terrorist groups, and they don't have the resources or the funding that we have, but they're attacking us with an asymmetrical warfare approach, and that is, they don't have F-35 planes, they don't have carriers, but they do have a cadre of good software people, and if they can attack our different computer systems and data centers with malware and ransomware, it really paralyzes us, and it paralyzes our economy. And we have to fight that war a lot differently than we fought the last war.
I think you just wrote an article, did you say, on this?
Yes, one of the articles I wrote was Nanokrieg, which is now the new warfare. Instead of Blitzkrieg, I have a book I'm writing. It's called Nanokrieg Beyond Blitzkrieg. And it talks about the war on terrorism and cybersecurity. And when you take a look at the issue of air superiority, everybody understands what air superiority is from a traditional warfare standpoint. What we need is global net superiority, where our data centers, our server farms are well protected, and we don't have to worry about cyber intrusions and malware attacking our different companies in different industries. And that's something that we need to start addressing today, not 5 years from now.
Well, and obviously, as we tape this in June of 2017, and we got the U.S. Congress looking at what the Russians did relative to the last election. We've seen the Russians trying to have some kind of impact. The state of Illinois Board of Elections had data stolen, so just the personal data of voters is now wasn't protected. Tens of thousands of people had that information stolen, and of course, maybe that leads to their identifications being stolen. What do you advise to people? And first of all, what is your assessment of to what extent are we protected or vulnerable now? And what would you advise to the powers that be, either at a corporation or at the national government level, as far as protecting and building the kind of security into our systems that you're recommending?
Well, number one is we're not fighting a war anymore that we have Geneva Convention rules. There's no Geneva Convention for cyber warfare. In other words, any location or any installation is fair game. And when we take a look at that, that means that somebody could attack your stock portfolio. A lot of people buy gold and they have the gold certificates instead of holding on to the physical gold. Well, that can be wiped out if you have the wrong security on any of those companies. Somebody can come in and just transfer all that out. And that's something that a lot of people maybe don't understand, how vulnerable some of these areas are. And right now, we're not protected. I mean, you look at any study, the latest study that was out this year by Verizon talked about how companies are still vulnerable. 1 out of 4 banks are still vulnerable. You have a lot of people that have a false sense of security that they have adequate cyber protection, and they really don't.
Well, Governor Rauner has started a Department of Technology called Do It, which is one of the things they are doing is trying to upgrade the computer systems for the state of Illinois that people were shocked to find out are 35 or 40 years old, and yet they're handling all of this data, but ineffectively, because, I mean, we can't have a modern economy when we're using computers that were made in the Reagan administration. That's just one example often where, as you say, the vulnerabilities, that government at least is often not up to speed just with even modern technologies and encrypting the data as they should be.
Well, it's government and it's also all the commercial companies as well. And I think some people have a false, as I said, some of the people that actually work in security have a false sense of security that what they're applying is ironclad protection. And we're not at that point yet. We definitely aren't. And we have to take a stronger focus on what we're doing and what we're adhering to as far as policies and procedures for password protection. Sometimes it's as simple as password protection and using the right passwords and not abusing some of these security procedures. But when you see people going out and saying, oh, I got hacked, I got this information broken into, that's occurring more than what people think. And sometimes you don't realize it for a year. Sometimes you might be hacked and you might not recognize that for a year. And that's a problem.
Before we close out, the Illinois Channel, of course, does a lot of coverage in the state capitol, and too many times government is reactive than proactive. That's kind of what we're talking about with all this security issues. As far as economic development, we've heard so much between the political parties talking about either cutting taxes, lowering the cost of government, lowering certainly the high property taxes in Illinois. Are there issues that you would want those who are empowered in the state of Illinois to focus on and say, here's something that you guys, if you want to create a better business environment, here's what you ought to be focusing on?
Well, like they're doing nationwide, you have to take off some of the regulations. You have to take off some of the fees. I mean, some people go crazy in Illinois with, let's just tack on another fee to a business. Let's tack on another corporate franchise tax, or let's double it. And that has gotten a lot of people to move out. I myself owned a Class C corporation for over 27 years in Illinois, and I dissolved it because all the fees were getting to be too much money. And you get to a point where not only do you lose companies that were already in Illinois, but you scare away companies that say, hey, I can go to another state that is more business friendly. and I'm going to set all my resources there. And Illinois is losing not only businesses, but they're actually losing population. And it's because they have too restrictive business regulations, and they have to wake up. It's not the 1950s anymore.
All right. Well, Jim Carlini, we appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you.